Hello and welcome to this session in which we will discuss network security. In the prior session, we looked at what is a network and what are the various components of a network. In this session, we would look at how companies protect their network. Protect their network against what? Against cyber attacks. Now, companies can employ several network security methods. So there's not only one method or two methods, there are several methods to protect yourself against cyber attacks. And each of these methods offer a different layer of defense to safeguard information and system. And by implementing a combination, a layer of this network, security can be enhanced. Companies can create a robust defense strategy that significantly reduce the risk of cyber attacks and make sure the integrity, confidentiality, and the availability of their data and systems. So in this session, what we're going to be looking at are those methods that companies can utilize to protect their network. There are several methods. We're going to look at each one of them separately, but remember, companies can use all of them at the same time. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, farhatlectures.com.
Farhat Accounting Lectures is a supplemental educational tool that's going to help you with your CPA exam preparation as well as your accounting courses. My CPA material is aligned with your CPA review course such as Becker, Roger, Wiley, Gleam, Miles. My accounting courses are aligned with your accounting courses broken down by chapter and topics. My resources consist of lectures, multiple choice questions, true-false questions, as well as exercises. Go ahead, start your free trial today.
Firewalls. Firewalls usually are the first line of defense in a network security. And firewall, the best analogy I can give you is a fortress. Let's assume you have a palace and you want to build a fortress around that palace. Well, the fortress would stop intruders. That's the purpose of the firewall. They create a barrier. This is what a firewall is, between secured and controlled internal network that can be trusted and untrusted network such as the internet. So the firewall will filter the traffic by controlling the access to the network through a set of systematic rules, basically what's allowed, what's not allowed. And we're going to look at various types of firewalls. Firewalls minimizes the risk of attackers and malware infiltrating the network. Also, firewalls play a critical role in enforcing data protection policies, compliance with regulation. How? By restricting access to sensitive data and services. And modern firewalls, because firewalls are being upgraded constantly, are designed to adapt to new threats. So they can be updated, providing the organization with a dynamic and robust security mechanism to protect against a wide range of cyber attacks. Bear in mind, any firewall has to be properly configured. You need proper configuration. It needs to be updated on a regular basis. Monitoring are essential to ensure the firewall is effectively protecting against current threat and evolving and emerging threats, because threats are emerging constantly. And as a result, we have many types of firewalls, and firewalls are being updated as we are preparing this recording. So let's take a look at the basic one. They're called packet filtering firewalls. Those are the basic. They inspect data packets at the network level based on the IP addresses, port number, and protocols without examining what's inside the packet. The packet is what's inside this message. Just they look at it from the outside on the network-based level, based on the IP address, the port number, where it is coming from, without examining the inside packet. This is a fast way to check something. Because you don't need to examine what's inside the packet. It goes real quick, but it offers less security. Then we could have what's called stateful inspection firewalls. These track the state of connection. So what is your connection? You're connecting to my network. What's your state of connection? Making the decision based on traffic context. So basically, is this connection overall is trusted? Here you're offering more security by distinguishing legitimate packets for different connection. Why? Because you might be able to associate certain packet with malicious connection, and based on the connection, you will flag them. You could have a proxy firewalls or application level firewalls. Obviously, application level means they operate at the application layer, at the application level, acting as an intermediary to filter traffic, which enhances security by separating the network device from the direct internet access. Here, right on the layer, on the application level, you're separating the outside traffic. And obviously you have the next generation firewall, and as the next generation firewall imply, integrate traditional firewall capabilities, what we saw above, plus advanced feature like encrypted traffic inspection, intrusion prevention, targeting modern threat like advanced malware and application layer attacks. So obviously the next generation firewall is the best. The point is firewalls are evolving as security attacks are evolving. So that's one way to protect your network is firewalls. There are different types of firewalls. You need to have a good idea what is the purpose of a firewall. Another way you can protect your network, you could have a firewall, is network segmentation. And from the word segmentation, what's segmentation? It means separating things, segmenting things. What's the definition? It refers to the practice of splitting a network into separate, smaller parts, often using hardware and software-based solutions. What you do, rather than having one network, you'll have, for example, 3 separate networks, rather than have a network. And each segment can have its own unique security policies and control, effectively creating barriers. So what you do, and obviously you by saying so, you understand why, but we're going to explain why. So basically you take your network and you split it into 3 or 4 or whatever, or 2 or 5, and each separate network, each, let's call it subnetwork, has its own unique security policies and controls. So common method include using firewalls. So each network will have its own firewall between the other network, virtual local area network, and software-defined networking. So you're separating the network. You could also use isolation technique. Isolation might involve creating what we call air-gapped network. What's air-gapped network? Simply disconnecting the network from the internet. So if you have something on a certain network, what you do is you disconnect this network from the internet. This is if you have highly sensitive data that you want no one to access. You don't want the outside, you don't want to have any access to it from the outside world. So you create what we call an air gap, basically disconnecting. It's like when you disconnect your internet, that's it. If you have something on your computer is basically isolated from the outside world. Or you could use virtual network segmentation for cloud and virtual environment if you are using the cloud. So what are the benefits of network segmentation? Now we understand what network segmentation, what are the benefits? I'm assuming you already know the benefits. Well, the first benefit is enhanced security. By isolating the segment from each other, attackers' ability to move laterally within a network is limited. So let's assume they attacked the green network. Well, okay, that's fine. We had a weakness in the green network and they were able to attack the green network. Now they are isolated from the red network. They are isolated from the blue network because the green network itself is isolated. So if one segment is compromised, segmentation helped contain the breach, preventing it from spreading to other parts of the network. Also, segmentation improves performance. It can reduce network congestion by limiting broadcast traffic to within the individual segment. Remember when we talked about networking, we said we broadcast the message. So when we want to broadcast the message within one network, well, it's going to increase performance because you are only dealing with one network, smaller network. This ensures more efficient use of network resources and improve performance rather than congesting, broadcasting the same message for network that they don't need to be broadcasted there. Simplifying compliance. Certain regulation require that specific type of data handled differently. So let's assume you want to have the most sensitive data on the blue network. Well, this allows you to do that. Why? Because you isolate the blue network and you're in compliance with the regulation. That's good. So segmentation can help organizations comply with these regulations by isolating sensitive data. And easier troubleshooting. If you have a problem with the red network, you could just deal with the red network without going into the green or the blue network. So this simplification can lead to faster resolution time and less downtime. Now, there are benefits, but just like anything, we have benefits. What else do we have? We have challenges and consideration. The first challenge and consideration, I'm sure you guessed it, is there may be some complexity. Maintaining 3 networks, implementing or more, I'm just having you this 3 network here, green, red, and blue. Implementing network segmentation can be complex and require careful planning to make sure it doesn't disrupt existing operation or create new vulnerabilities, maybe by Separating them, you are creating vulnerabilities without knowing. Also maintenance, because now you have basically 3 separate maintenance. Segmented network require ongoing maintenance to make sure security policies are kept up to date and that the segmentation remain effective against evolving threat. Now you have to deal with each segment separately, looking at its risks, looking at its security policies, updating its own patches, and if you updated the green, do you update the red, or it's not necessary, so on and so forth. So it's going to create more maintenance, and obviously maintaining 3 network will cost you more. There might be additional costs associated with hardware, software, people to maintain this, to implement maintenance, a segmented network. Let's talk about the SSID, the service set identifier, and this is the Wi-Fi that you see on your computer. Maybe if you look at the lower right-hand side and you would see this sign, it means this is your SSID, which is the service set identifier. This is essentially the name given to a wireless network, allowing devices to identify and connect to it, because that's how you find the network. This is how you find the Wi-Fi network. This name is broadcasted by the wireless access points, typically the router, making it visible to nearby wireless enabled devices. This is how you connect to your computer. Most likely this is how you are connected. So this is what the SSID is, the service set identifier. While this feature facilitates the ease of connection to the network, because it's telling you, hold on, it's raising its hand right here, I'm here, go ahead and connect to me, it also poses a security threat, because this is an entry point, because this is where you go into the network, making the network more visible and potentially more vulnerable to malicious activities. So what can you do to improve the security? Reduce visibility. Disable the SSID broadcasting. So simply put, you go into a cafe and you said, well, they don't have internet, how come? So what they did, they can disable SSID broadcasting. Why? So it's not visible. So why do you have a network and it's not visible? Well, you want people to know the network name and type the network name rather than having it visible. So when SSID broadcasting is turned off, the network name is no longer actively transmitted. The network is there, just the name is not there. This means that the network will not appear on the list of available networks that devices typically display. And I'm sure if you open your phone right now as I'm talking to you and you're in a public place, you're going to see many networks around you. There might be other networks available, but they don't appear because you can turn them off. So what does it mean, turn them off? It means the owner of this network know the name of that network, and when they want to log into that network, they input the name. So they make it more secure. They make it invisible to the people that they don't want them to see, to the public. So instead of connecting to the network, a user must know the exact name, which is the SSID, and manually enter it to the device. Now, what are the considerations for this? Well, it's not a foolproof. Disabling an SSID broadcasting is not a comprehensive security solution. It only deters against most casual hackers, because if the hacker don't see the network, they move on. They're not gonna waste time and look for it. Just you're making it more difficult for them, that's all. So, but bear in mind, most sophisticated attacker can use what we call network sniffers. They can sniff a hidden network. Although it's not there, they can find it. Also, for some time, let's assume you have a cafe or a library or a place where people congregate, it becomes inconvenience for them to type it in. For legitimate users, connection to a network with an SSID broadcast disabled can be less convenient, as it requires manually inputting the network name and setting, especially if the network name is difficult. So it's good to have it, but you want to complement it with other security measures, such as strong encryption, WPA2 and WPA3, which we'll look at them shortly, to effectively protect a wireless network. Another form of protecting yourself on a network is virtual private network. A virtual private network creates a secure encrypted connection over a public network. So you go to public network, that's fine. And basically, if this is the public network, this is the public network, okay, this is where the traffic is coming from. What you do is you create your own tunnel and you transmit information inside that tunnel, therefore making your communication more secure. VPNs uses tunneling to encapsulate data packet within another protocol, creating a protected tunnel for the data. So when you transmit data, someone on the public network cannot access it. So Internet Protocol Security, IPsec, enhances security by encrypting the data. What you're doing is you're just make the data encrypted, What does that mean? It means if somebody accesses it, for one thing, they're not supposed to access it. Even if they access it, they cannot see it. So providing authentication, you will need to authenticate yourself, and you are limiting the access to it. So VPNs enable secure remote access to organizational resources, ensuring data privacy, and can bypass geo restrictions. For example, you might be in a country where you cannot access your company network. Well, through VPN, you could create your own tunnel and get to that information, get to the information needed for your work, making them essential for privacy and security online. Wi-Fi, protected access, and its successor, WPA2 and WPA3, are security protocols, the language, designed to secure wireless network. Now, each version obviously is an advanced version of the previous one. So each version offers improvement in encryption and provide additional security feature over the predecessor ones. So WPA, the Wi-Fi protected access, offered improved security over the first one, wired equivalent privacy, WEP, enhancing protection for data in transit over wireless network. That's an enhancement. Then WPA2 advances this by mandating encryption. So WPA2 have this encryption, further securing wireless data transitions against unauthorized access. And guess what? WPA3 strengthens security with further advanced encryption, better protection against brute force attacks, and secured handshake protocols. Basically, when you transmit information, the other party basically received it and they shake hand. It means they confirm that they received it, offering enhanced data protection on public network. So basically, WPA, WPA2 make encryption mandatory, WPA3 advanced encryption, protect against brute force attack, and secured handshake. Now let's talk about endpoint security. What are the endpoints? So what is when we say endpoint, what are the endpoint? You are the endpoint. I am the endpoint. Endpoint is where the user uses this information. The endpoint, it means the last point in the system. Endpoint refer to the approach of securing the various endpoints on a network. Essentially, any device that connects to the network, such as laptops, smartphones, and tablets. We use those tablets, smartphone, and laptop. We are the endpoint. So what you do now, you want to secure the endpoint. How so? This strategy is crucial because each device is connected. Each device with a network connection can act as an entry point. So what you do is you protect the entry point because the endpoint can be an entry point. An endpoint security aims to protect these points of entry from malicious activities and threat, even if the rest of the network is secure. So you don't only secure the network itself, you secure the endpoint. So no one can even go through the endpoint in order to get to the network. So you would secure, like basically enhanced protection. So implementing endpoint security measures helps in creating a layered security approach, ensuring that each device has its own set of defenses against a threat. And this is increasingly important in today's environment where the number of endpoints has exploded, where people are using their mobile devices and everything is the Internet of Things, everything is connected to the Internet, expanding the footprint. We talked about this, expanding the footprint and the attack surface that organizations need to protect. Now, how do we protect those endpoint security? We're going to go through 4 or 5 recommendations how to enhance the endpoint security. Think of an endpoint as your laptop. It doesn't have to be a laptop. Anything that's the Internet of Things. Any uses the Internet, but think about your laptop, your tablet, your phone. Okay. 1, you want to have antivirus and malware screening software. The purpose is to detect, quarantine, and remove any malicious software from that entry point and any viruses, preventing it from causing damage or spreading to the network. Well, these programs routinely scan the device for known threat, monitor behavior for suspicious activities, and update their threat database on a regular basis to protect against new viruses and malware. So you protect your own computer so they cannot go through your computer. Authenticate and authorize mechanism. We're going to have a whole session about authentication and authorization, but what does that mean? It ensures that people who are using these equipment are the legitimate users and they have access to it, and they have to access to only what they need to ensure that only authorized users can access the device and the network connected to it. This includes obviously password protection, biometric verification, and digital certificate. We're going to talk about those much more in details in the next session. And these mechanisms verify the identity of the users and devices. We identify the users as well as the device, and we'll talk about that later, controlling access to the data and resources. So right from the get-go, from the user's perspective, we try to stop the attack there before going into the network. We could use auditing software. This is to monitor and record system activities and changes, providing a log that can be analyzed to detect any suspicious activities, any anomalies, anything that's unusual. We'll try to get to it early on. Auditing software tracks login attempts, file access, system changes, and other event that can indicate a security breach or policy before it's too late. Because when someone tries to breach the system, they may not be successful the first time. Maybe at the beginning they might be trying to break into the system, basically going through a dry run. Maybe you can catch on of what's happening when they are trying to learn about you. And this is what the auditing software comes into place. You could also install local host firewall. Okay, you have a firewall for the network itself, then you have a firewall for your own computer to block unauthorized access to the device while allowing only approved communication to and from it. So local host firewalls filter incoming and outgoing network based on a set of security rules, protecting the device itself from unwanted network. So first you have to go through the device, then get to the network. Well, if you can prevent them from going to the device, they cannot get to the network. You could also implement host-based intrusion detection and prevention system, IDSs and IPSs. Here, the purpose is to identify and stop threat and malicious activities on the device. How does it work? Those IDS and IPS solution monitor, think about a camera, monitoring network and system activities for malicious actions or policy violation. IDS logs and alerts the users or administrator of suspicious activities immediately, while the IPS actively blocks and prevents such activities. So you want to get to it as soon as possible. You can also implement system hardening. System hardening is a combination of everything that we talked about plus. System hardening tries to minimize weaknesses by limiting potential attack vectors. This is what we're talking about here, is limiting the access point, creating protection at the endpoint. But here you're creating endpoint at every level across all IT infrastructure components like application, database, operating system, software, and network devices to reduce unauthorized access opportunities. You can harden your database, establishing tiered access. Not all people have the same access to the database. And encrypt data at rest. In case data was accessed, no one can read it because it is encrypted. So that's what you can do. Also, what else can you do? You can harden the endpoint. Well, we talked about this. Restrict user privilege, enforce local firewall, implement antivirus. This is what we're just talking about. Network hardening, configure firewalls to close any unused ports and block unnecessary protocol. All what you're doing here is you are strengthening. Hardening means strengthening the system, every component of the system. You can harden your servers, physically secure them, and geographically separate servers. So if one goes down, we have another server up and running in another geographical area. Implement rigorous testing protocol. Make sure test the servers, make sure they're working. So in case one went down, we can get the other one up and running. MAC filtering, a security method where network access is restricted to devices with pre-approved MAC addresses. Medium access control, it means only certain computers can access, certain connection can access our network, preventing unauthorized devices from connecting. All of those, they are considered system hardening. Basically, make everything more difficult to penetration. That's what system hardening is. From the database to the endpoint to the network to the servers to any device that we are using. Let's take a look at this multiple choice questions from farhatlectures.com. During a security audit, it was recommended that a corporation implement a VPN support for remote employees accessing the internal network, VPN, virtual private network. What's the primary benefit of this recommendation? So when we're using a VPN, what is the benefit? And here they're telling you is for remote employees accessing internal network. Is it this recommendation speeds the network connection? Is that the case? Is this the purpose of a VPN? Not necessary. Actually, VPN might even slow the connection because that's more secure. It takes more time to double check everything. So I would not say it's for speed purposes. I would take A out. To allow the use of public Wi-Fi safely. Is this the purpose of a VPN? I would say yes. You have a traffic going through a public network. So what will the VPN do? So if you have this traffic and it's going through a network, what you will do is you will tunnel. Simply put, the VPN will have its own tunnel inside this Wi-Fi, and it will send the information securely inside this Wi-Fi, and you cannot access this information. I would say B is a good answer choice, but let's wait. Let's look at C and D. It increases the range of a Wi-Fi network. That's not the purpose of a VPN. That's maybe a repeater or an amplifier. It reduces the need for a strong password. It reduces the need. No, you still need strong password for a VPN. It doesn't reduce the need. You still need a strong password because you don't want your VPN to be penetrated. That defeats the whole point. So the answer, as we expected, it allowed the use of public Wi-Fi safely. So that's the answer choice. What should you do now? What should you do now? You do now. You want to go to Farhat Lectures, look at additional MCQs, additional resources that's going to help you study for your CPA exam, for your accounting courses, for your professional certification. Invest in yourself. Good luck, study hard, and of course, stay safe.